Hi, everybody. This is S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com. I thought I would just start a little stream today because I wanted to talk a little bit about why Jesus had to die. When I was on YouTube just recently with Bionic Dance, she had asked me about why Jesus had to die, and it didn't seem to make sense to her. So I thought I would just mention what I mentioned to her in the stream because I think that this reasoning is pretty legitimate. And so one of the issues with Jesus's death is he sacrificed, and so people a lot of times will ask, why did Jesus have to make that sacrifice? And um and the answer is this: he was the only one who was able to do that. And let me explain a little story to tell you why. There is a little boy in my neighborhood. There are two boys, and one of the boys, unfortunately, is no longer with us. They're two 15-year-olds, and they were in a group of about four kids, and they were in the house of a policeman. And the policeman, they were with his son, the policeman's son, in this house. And what happened was, the policeman had his gun in a room, and the boys went to use the bathroom. And when they went to use the bathroom in that room, they picked the lock and they saw the gun there. And so what they did was they took the gun off the holster, and they thought it wasn't loaded, and they started playing around with it. And then they went into the room where this other little boy was playing a video game, and one of the boys took the gun and he got behind the little boy with the video game, and he said, "Hey, let's scare him. Let's scare Bradley." And so they got behind Bradley. Unfortunately, one of them said, Bradley turned around and looked at the boy and said, "That looks real." And then the boy said something like, "I wonder if it's loaded." And then he pulled the trigger and shot Bradley in the back of the head. And, immediately they called 911. It was a really horrible deal. What's really sad about this particular situation is Bradley is no longer with us, and the little boy who pulled the trigger, who thought the gun wasn't loaded, unfortunately, is now facing a prison term. He is going to be tried as an adult, and it was a very scary situation. And so I was thinking about this situation, and I thought to myself, if I were that little boy's parent, the one who pulled the trigger, what would I do? And I thought, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could trade places with that little boy as a parent, because that's probably what his parent is thinking. I'm sure they're completely heartbroken. Two families are destroyed. And I started thinking about this in comparison to Jesus. And I thought that Jesus would have done the same thing for us, essentially. So, as our parents or as our father, Jesus basically did the same thing for us. He made the sacrifice, and he paid the price for our sins. And so, if we can say that it's a very similar situation to that, I think that helps us understand this whole situation. And so I want to say hi to Jordan. That's Cindy in the chat, and Gavin. Welcome. I really love to see you guys. I'm actually filming this from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I am right now. And I'm on a little break where my family's here and my sister's family's here. We've got people monitoring our house, so I'm not worried about that kind of thing. But that's something that's going on. So I want to say thank you so much. So anyway, would anyone like to join me today? If you're interested in coming in here, I can stay on for a little while. We're between, it's a little après ski right now. And if anyone's interested in joining me, just let me know. I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat if you're interested, and we can go from there. Hi, Jesse Camping. So thank you for joining us. So we have one of the reasons that people also talk about with Jesus's death is the theories of why Jesus died. Hellbound Heathen, thank you, and Saint Tommy, thank you for you too. So some of the theories, basically, there's the theory that Jesus basically took a sacrifice for us. And some people say that one of the other things that he did when he came to this world was to basically show us the example of how we're supposed to live. And so his showing us the example of how we're supposed to live is very important because we can look at him as our servant leader. And what's really interesting about the ancient times, and I read this in the book Dominion, and I also have read it in a couple of other books since then, is in ancient times, basically, the wealthy were revered and the poor were considered cursed. And so people were treating them accordingly. The wealthy got the great hospitals, wealthy got good schools, and that kind of thing. And the poor really didn't get much. And so people looked down on the poor and scorned them. And so when Jesus came about, they were probably shocked because they saw this man who claimed to be the Son of Man constantly hanging around the poor people. And he was always also hanging around the prostitutes and the tax collector and fishermen and all of these different people. And so it's a pretty interesting thing that he did. And so, so I just think that that's something that we should mention and think about. So yeah, it's a very sad story. Jason Tokian, thank you for being here too. And Nathaniel Robinson, thank you here too. So if anyone's interested in joining me, I can go ahead and put a link to this chat. Is anyone interested? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in here because I've got a few more minutes that I can stay on. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to just open this up. Hold on. Invite, copy URL. Here we go. Oops, wrong button. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and set this up and open it up. It's a pretty crazy idea to just open it up like this. Whoops. Anyone wants to join me? Okay, so if you click on that link, then you will be in this conversation as well. Okay, Hellbound Heathen's going to join me. Should be fun. I've never spoken to Hellbound Heathen, so we'll have to see what he or she has to say. I'm not sure if Hellbound Heathen is a male or female. So hi, Supreme King. Good to see you. So let's go ahead and see when Hellbound Heathen gets in here. If anyone else wants to join, again, you can just click on that link and we'll all be together and we can have a little chat, sort of maybe a Q&A. So if there are any questions or anything that you guys think about, you want to talk about, just let me know. So let's go, Supreme King says. So I'm just pausing here for a minute. Is anyone in the chat going to be watching the David Wood, Matt Dillahunty debate that's going to come up on Monday on the Modern Day Debate channel? So that's something pretty exciting stuff. So we'll have to see. I'm carrying my speaker here. I actually brought my speaker. My school is closed. I'll mention that. So I teach at a university, and the university right now, because of this coronavirus, is essentially decided that the teachers are all going to be doing our instruction online. And so I knew when I was coming to where I am now that I would need to bring my computer and my accessories. So I brought this speaker. I'm probably going to be doing classes by Zoom. And so that's my plan. I hear someone. Is this Hellbound Heathen?
I think so. I'm trying to figure this out. Hold on. Do you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. I've never used Zoom before, so.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you.
How's the audio?
The audio sounds good.
Okay, good. All right. I don't know. It says it's launching, so I don't know. But anyhow, you can hear me, so that's all that's important.
Yeah, I can definitely hear you. Let me just see if I can. I'm trying to make it so when you talk that the screen, hold on.
Okay.
Because you're not showing your face. So I think what we'll do here is I'll change the view. So you talk. I think this will show you talking, and when I talk, it'll show me talking. What, we got someone else here. Hold on. Do we have somebody else here? I think we do. We've got Gavin here too. Hi, Gavin.
Is with us.
How are
Hey,
you?
how's it going, Gavin?
And you live in our body,
Okay.
in our mind, in ourselves, and you're controlling everything that we do.
Gavin, you're a little bit quiet. Can you make that louder?
So listen.
That's better.
So, right in every way, because we believe that you, Jesus, is with us. So Father, I pray.
Gavin, you got to speak louder. It's really bad.
I thank you, support those who need support, and be with those who are lost in their thoughts and mind.
Hey,
I'll be right back.
You've got to speak a little louder.
Holy Spirit,
we can't hear you.
Each and every one of us as we go through life. Yes, some people, sometimes we receive words and attitudes and things that really hurt us.
I agree. Hey, listen, you really, okay,
Well,
listen, Gavin,
so
I don't think you can hear me, but you've got to speak louder because I can't hear you. Oh my gosh, Gavin, I'm going to have to mute you if you do.
And only the name of Jesus.
We can't hear you, Gavin.
The name of our Lord.
Okay.
The Son of God will strengthen us in every step of the way.
I agree.
Father, I pray specifically for Pa'ato.
Okay, Gavin, I'm going to mute you until you fix your speaker, okay? You've got to fix your speaker. Okay, I don't think he can hear me, but he's talking. So I'm going to come
Yeah,
over to you.
I don't think he hears you.
No, I don't think so either. So
So I turned my camera on. Can you see me?
yes, I can.
Oh, okay, good, good.
Okay, I've got Gavin. Let me just unmute him and see if he can. Yeah. Okay, I unmuted him. Oh, maybe he mute. Oh, I can't even unmute him now. That's weird. He's like, I think he muted himself or something.
Well, he looks frozen on my end.
He just couldn't hear me. So,
Hmm.
okay. So anyway, now we're gallery view. Okay. So tell me about yourself.
Oh, shit. You don't have that long, do you?
No, I don't. I'm
Yeah.
yeah. You got
Well,
a long
just
story.
no. I'm kidding. No, just briefly. No, I found you through Steve McRae's channel.
Oh, okay.
And I liked what you did because it seemed like you approached Christianity from a historical perspective, and I thought that was really interesting. Myself, I'm a YouTuber, and I am a witch and an occultist, and have been for a very long time. And so what my channel does is I debunk a lot of the bad and false information that's out there about people who are pagans, witches, and occultists. And that's what I focus on. So whenever I come across a Christian who's just, doing their own thing, talking about the historical, and they're actually just spreading truth about Christianity and truth about their beliefs rather than lying and making up completely false information about other religions, I tend to respect people like you for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and I've been on Steve's channel a bunch of times actually, and he's been on mine a couple times. So,
Mhm.
so that's great. Yeah. So you say you're a that's interesting. So you're a witch and you believe in an occult.
Mhm.
That to me is. I mean, I'll give you my honest opinion. That's
Sure.
pretty scary.
It's scary. Okay.
Well, because for my belief, what I believe about that is that you're interacting with could be dark spiritual forces.
Hmm.
And so it might be something that could hurt you is actually what, in
Really?
my opinion, it could be something that
You
could be
know,
very
I've
hurtful.
never ever heard that before in my entire life.
Really? So I'm the first one to say that?
I'm being completely sarcastic with you.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
all I hear. It's all
Yeah.
I hear. It's all I read in my comment sections. Oh, it's all, yeah. No, that's not true. It's absolutely not true. It's it's uh it's studying stuff that has been going back for thousands of years.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of occult knowledge was pretty much repressed by the church, by the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of those books were hidden away. They were the occult knowledge, and that occult knowledge was such things as a heliocentric model of the universe. They had a lot of stuff wrong, a lot of like alchemy. There was the belief that, certain, your health was dependent upon your levels of planetary metals in your body. So like if you were, like they would prescribe mercury and lead for people,
That's
you know.
interesting. How
Yeah.
awful.
So, I mean, so the occult really covers a lot of stuff. And it's the thing that people believe that we're out summoning demons and all this other nonsense is not true. Um, there's a lot of in the medieval magical grimoires like the Key of Solomon and excuse me, books like that. A lot of it is based on uh, Christian belief and Christian approach to things. So they talk about summoning demons and they use, prayers from the Bible and they use sayings from the Bible. And so they kind of perpetuated that belief that they were summoning demons and evil spirits and stuff like that. But most people who are pagan and witches, they're not, that's not what they do. They're not like summoning demons and evil
Well,
spirits and stuff like that.
I didn't think that you'd be summoning them. I think that the view that I have is that uh, is that you sort of have opened the door to allow that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
That's like,
Yeah,
I don't
I've
think you
heard
would
that
want to
too. And
summon them. I don't,
I don't
it would
know,
not
I
be a
don't
good
know what
move.
that would, I don't know what that would, how that would manifest in my life. So to the best
Hmm.
of my knowledge, I'm 53 years old. I've never had anything manifest
Let's
in
see
my
if,
life that I feel was of a supernatural nature. So
gonna see if you guys can see this. Can you see this behind me? I don't know if you
is
can
it
see.
snowing?
Yes, you can see that. Doesn't that look cool?
Wow. I live in California, so snow to me
It's
is
nothing,
really,
nothing.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
No, I live in I might fix it this way. So, okay, so I'm gonna just switching around here.
Oh, what happened to Gavin?
Gavin, I couldn't, Gavin, I had Gavin on here, but I was having a hard time hearing him, and then
Hmm.
he dropped off, and then he said he's in a church.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just gonna stay on this side. I think that's a better view. So you guys can check out the snows. There's something in the background. I usually film from Florida, so this is completely different. So yeah, okay, so yeah, so your view is that you're not, so have you ever played with things like Ouija boards or any of that kind of stuff?
No, Ouija boards are Ouija boards came out of spiritism movement where people were trying to contact spirits, and it was they used to call them spirit boards too, but it was created to sell and to market to people who are interested in spiritism. So I know that there's a lot of occultists and witches who believe in Ouija boards and they use Ouija boards. That's fine. To me, they're they're like a novelty item. They're like a game. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
is. Because what it is depending upon how many people you have whose fingers are on that little planchard moving around, they move it around themselves, either consciously or unconsciously.
That's what you
And they've
think,
even
huh?
done studies on this. And if you blindfold yourself and you play with a Ouija board, it doesn't make any sense. It's like garbled information. But if you take the blindfold off and you have people suddenly saying stuff like yes, no, and it's giving information like that. But no,
Hmm.
I don't believe in Ouija
You don't
board.
believe that. Now, do you believe, let me ask you this, do you believe in space aliens?
Space aliens?
Mm-hmm. Like, do you
Aliens that
believe,
come from space or come
yeah,
from
do you
other
believe that
planets?
do you believe that there's a possibility of life on another planet?
I think that statistically, yes. I mean, if you can imagine the size of our universe, there has to be some form of life out there besides just us.
Do you
And
believe, okay, interesting.
go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, okay, do you also believe that, do you believe that people have seen UFOs?
Yes, because UFOs just means an unidentified flying object. So if you have something and you're in an airplane and you're going, what, 400, 600, 700 miles per hour, and you see something that you can't explain, it's an unidentified flying object. But later on, they might find out that it was a weather balloon or an asteroid or whatever else, and then it becomes identified, and then it becomes known as to what it is. And I think I know where you're going with this line of questioning because
Where do you think I'm
because I did
going?
a video response to Hugh Ross. Hugh Ross is
Oh, that
completely,
is
in
where I
my
was going. How'd you
yes,
know?
in my opinion, Hugh Ross is completely, in a polite manner, he's mistaken. he's
Well,
he's
so
mistaken.
let me have you do a response here. I'm going to tell the audience what I was talking about. So I know
Okay.
you know where I'm going, and then you can tell us what your response was to Hugh, because I've read a lot of Hugh's books. I've read like 5 of his books, and so that is where I was going. So
Mhm.
what Hugh Ross did is he looked at unidentified, just like you're saying with UFOs. The vast majority of these things are things like weather balloons or something in the sky, something that could be explained naturally. And so, or just by man-made in some way. But then there's these, what he calls residual UFOs. And this idea was, according to Hugh, if you calculate the odds, I mean, if you actually just look at all of the other planets that we're able to see, for space aliens or for life on some other planet to be able to reach us, really is virtually impossible, because if it's carbon-based life and it only lives for maximum maybe 110 years, or maybe 120, whatever it is, then you can't even travel. I mean, we can go hundreds of thousands of years away to be able to get to the planet planets that we can't see, that there would be a possibility for life to exist in another planet, because the ones we can see, we realize that they don't meet what they call the 10 habitable zones. And so they don't have the ability to produce advanced life, the ones we can see. So the reason I was asking you that is because we have these reports of what they call residual UFOs. And in residual UFOs, there's this idea that what Hugh Ross thinks is that some of these interactions that people have had with these very negative aliens they've reported, according to Hugh Ross, they think that actually might be instead some sort of demon activity. And he says that in places where people practice the occult more, we see more of these reports of residual UFOs, and they tend to occur right around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm curious to hear what your response is, because that was, to him, that was because we can't get life from other planets, because there's no physical way for life to get here from another planet, because if we look out far enough, it's hundreds of thousands of years away to be able to get to this other planet. And so because of that, he says it must be something from another dimension. And he says people have been physically hurt by these residual UFOs and these aliens who've abducted them in some cases. And so I'm just wondering, and actually I've talked to people. There was a guy called Gonna Go For It who used to come on my channel a couple of times, and he said that he met up with an alien and he lost like a day of his life. He couldn't figure out what happened to it, and some negative things happened to him. And so I found that kind of interesting. So I actually had somebody on there, but I'm wondering what your response would be to that. Like, what do you think it could be, or do you just think that it's all washed up? These people are pulling it out.
Well, I did a whole video response to Hugh Ross's interview on the 700 Club several months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I do believe that there is alien life on other planets. As to whether or not they've traveled here, I would say 99.9% I don't believe that they have. Obviously, I'm going to leave that 0.1% window open because I don't know for sure. But yeah, I don't believe that we've encountered alien life yet, or alien life has encountered us. And Hugh Ross, I don't know what he was citing as a source. That was my main complaint with him, was he was making these claims. It sounds okay. It sounds, sounds about right. But I don't know what he was using as a source. He mentioned Russia, and Russia did do, and also the American scientists also played with remote viewing, and which is clairvoyance or astral projection or whatever they believe it was. And I know that he was saying that because Russia did this, that somehow it opened up some door to the occult. And again, there was nothing to substantiate that. There was no supporting evidence. And so I think that Hugh Ross is making up stuff.
Well, he's written a book, and he's got a lot of sources in his book. So he's not just making it up. He's got a few books.
Then he needs to cite his sources. I mean, there was no reference.
Well, he actually has. So he's got a book with Ken Samples, and it's on this kind of thing. And he's definitely got many sources in the back of the book. And so it's not like he's just, and actually he had stories himself where he traveled to Russia and he met a bunch of university professors who had been dabbling in the occult, he said. And when they were dabbling in the occult, what happened was suddenly they were reporting these residual UFO encounters. And so it's kind of an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't read his book, and I really don't want to bother reading his book just to, placate some of the people who come onto my channel and ask me questions about Hugh Ross. If I was going to come onto my channel and make a claim that, say, magic was real, like it was actually real, and I could prove it to people, and I was going to, let's say I was going to talk about Christians, and I was going to say that I saw Christians performing, an actual sacrifice of a human being, and actually drinking their flesh and eating, excuse me, not drinking their flesh, but drinking their blood and eating their flesh. I would hope that every single one of my viewers would say, proof, we need evidence. So if I'm going to make a claim on my channel, I need to support that claim immediately. I don't need to say, read my book or check my blog or whatever. I should give a source right there and then. So that's how I view Hugh Ross. He's making a lot of claims. He's not supporting it. So I could, maybe I'll check out his book and read his book, but I'm also positive that I'm going to not find any claim that is substantiated in the book. If this was the case, if aliens were, let's say, extra dimensional demons from another dimension, or they were something else, there would be other scientists out there to support that. There would be something to support that. Right now, whenever people do actually encounter unidentified flying objects, they don't know what it is. That's why it's called an unidentified flying object. Once it's identified and they figure out the source of it, then, then they can explain that. So again, I started studying witchcraft when I was 13 years old. Into high school, into college, I've been initiated. I've joined covens. I've practiced on my own for 40 years now. I have never, ever encountered any kind of an evil spirit or a demonic force. It just doesn't happen.
It actually does. I mean, it happened to me. So I have a firsthand experience of my own experience. And so I can say that it absolutely is in existence. And that was actually part of the reason why I came back from being a rather very loose, weak Christian to being a very strong Christian when I realized that there's something else going on here. And so I can tell you that I've had that experience, and it scared me, just to put it mildly.
Okay. Would you mind telling us about it, or telling me about it?
It's I don't actually, I hate getting into that on my channel, but I did.
If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm not.
No, I came into that sort of a thing where I basically felt like I was being suffocated. There was a presence of a very, very cold and dark black spirit. I could see it. And so, and suddenly I was feeling like I was, trying to save my own life. I was trying to get away. And the one thing that saved me was saying the Our Father and the Hail Mary. I said the Our Father and the Hail Mary over and over and over until it went away.
Okay.
But that's actually, honestly, I've written this down before. I've actually put it in a book. I've done a blog on it. I don't say much on it. I think I might have mentioned it a couple of times on my channel. So I'm not, my husband knows about it. My family is aware of it. My sister and other people know about it. And so, because it really scared me, I actually got up the next morning and called everyone I knew, because I felt like something bad was going to happen to people. And so, and I was right. Actually, what happened the next day, that same day, was at, my neighbor found out that she had brain cancer, and she ended up passing away pretty shortly after that. And so that was just one of those things. So that was a pretty bad experience.
Yeah. Well, that sucks. I'm sorry about your neighbor. Yeah. I think that the mind is a very powerful thing. We can convince ourselves of almost anything. And there are people who get into witchcraft or the occult or magic, and they do sometimes feel like they encounter certain things or experience things that they can't explain, and it's usually something that's kind of fearful. Something bothers them or whatever. And chances are, if they analyze it and look at it and remember it and think about it, it was something that happened. There was a shadow or something that happened that they projected onto that, some kind of an evil presence, or maybe even a presence, period. I think that that's one of the things that any good occultist needs to do, is to determine what is actually happening and what they believe and they want to happen.
Well, no, I didn't want that to happen. I can assure you that is
Right.
the last thing I wanted to happen. And it honestly scared me in such a way. It was the most horrible experience ever. And I'll never forget it. It happened in March 2011. It was horrible. And so that started me on a pathway back to Christianity, actually. Because at that time, I actually was thinking that Eastern faiths were a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, it hasn't been my experience. So maybe I should have said that from the get-go. That's been my experience. And I've been practicing the occult and magic and witchcraft for a very long time, and I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's good. Well, no, I've never experienced it since then. I had one
mhm,
experience in my life and that was it.
mhm,
And actually now I think it was 2012, not 2011. Sorry about my mistake.
mhm.
March of
Yeah,
2012, because it was the same, just before and in fact, my sister ended up, the kind of interesting thing is my sister's with me right now and she ended up, um, uh, marrying the guy who's the husband of the woman who passed away. So my
mm,
sister's, so that, a few years later they met and my sister met him and they ended up getting married and now we're all one big happy family.
that's awesome.
So
So I actually wanted to come on to ask you about Jesus, because it sounds like you have, or do you mind if we change the subject?
no, that's wonderful.
Okay.
I'm wondering if I should get in a better spot. Let me just switch this up again. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I read the Bible like once, and then every so often I pick it up and flip through it, especially when I'm responding to a video or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But so to my understanding, the Christian concept of the Christ Savior is that he died on the cross for the sins of humanity, and when he died, that absolved humanity of sin. Is that correct, or am I understanding that
Exactly.
wrong?
Exactly. So humanity is basically in a sinful condition. There's a verse basically that says all fall short of the glory of God. So for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It's Romans 3:23. And so we all sin. Some people sin every day. Actually, I don't know really anybody who doesn't sin every day. So so this idea was we needed a savior. We needed somebody who can, oh no, oh, my sister's here. We needed somebody who could redeem us. And the only one who is actually capable of doing that would be one without sin. So there's this idea that our sin is burdening us to this world. And our sin was basically binding us to this world, if you want to call it that. And so what Jesus did was when he came down, he freed us from our sin by paying the price for our sin, essentially. It's like ransom theory is what it's
Mhm.
called.
Okay. So did that absolve everyone from sin at that moment?
That absolved us from being forced to remain here on earth, essentially. That absolved us from being locked to our sins here in this planet.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So before Jesus was crucified, people were still they were still bound to their sins on this planet, and
Hmm.
so they couldn't go to like heaven or hell, or
Correct, exactly.
oh, I see. So before he was crucified, no one went anywhere. So when you died, you just permanently died, or
When you died, your spirit was still here, basically. So
so is-
we have an example in the Bible in the Old Testament with Samuel being summoned by somebody in the Old Testament, and he appeared in his spirit form to somebody and talked to them.
mhm. So everyone's spirit when they died was kept on the earth.
Correct. And then
Okay.
that's part of the deal. So when Jesus died, he freed those people, he freed the saints, and that was reported in the book of Matthew.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, because because I didn't understand that. I thought that what happened was that when Jesus died, he absolved everyone of sin. And so basically everyone was free of sin.
No,
That's what I was.
we're free of the punishment. He essentially paid the price for our sin. So for example, if I go back to that little boy I was talking about at the beginning, something has to happen to the little boy. So the little
Mhm.
boy accidentally pulled the trigger and ended up killing somebody. So he has to have some sort of punishment. And the idea is, what's the punishment going to be? And he took a life essentially. So some people might say, well, he should go to prison for life, or some people might say that he should just go to a boys thing. But the reason why I brought up that particular situation is because he has to pay some price, but the price he'll pay will never be the full price, because we'll never be able to get back the other boy that he accidentally shot. And
Right.
so in that particular case, I was just saying that his parents in some case might say they'd like to pay the price for him so that he can have a full life. And that's sort of what Jesus did, is he paid the price for our sins. And so we're not bound to our sins. We still sin. He didn't wipe away our sins. He wiped away the punishment for our sins.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I have a better understanding of that. Okay.
So yeah, and Brian Stevens, I see you guys in the audience. Thank you everybody for Supreme King and Island News and Kimumaki and Brian Stevens. Is it possible that someone's spirit could leave their body and then go back into it? Yes, we have that. That's called near-death experiences.
Hmm.
And so
I can't even see the chat.
oh yeah, yeah, I can
Well, I
see
have
the
to
chat.
switch back and forth between screens.
No, I can see it. I thought my sister was here, but I guess not. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of on a short time here, so I'm just trying to figure out when they're going to call us and get us out of here. So because we're meeting up, we're either going to stay in our room and hang out, or we're going to go to her room and hang out. So that's the idea.
Oh, well, good. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe sometime in the future, maybe we can talk more, and maybe I can answer some questions for you.
Yeah, no, are there any other questions that you have about Jesus? Do you have any other thoughts on
that
that?
was about it. I didn't understand that, because like I would get into discussions with other Christians, they'd come to my videos and they would say, oh, you're gonna burn in hell. You got to turn your life over to Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, thank you very much.
Well,
I'm
you
not a
actually call
Christian.
yourself hellbound heathen, so it doesn't seem like you're very afraid of it. It doesn't seem like that's.
Well, that's because when I first got onto YouTube, I used my name, Liloken, as the name of my channel, and I felt like people didn't understand what that was. And so I had all these people talking about, you're going to hell and you're going to do this. And then I was watching another YouTube channel called Poisoning the Well, and they would always say hellbound heathens. And so I was like, you know what? That would be a good name for a channel. I wonder if it's available. So I typed it into YouTube and it was available. And I said, that's going to be the new name of my channel. So,
Interesting. And so Jesse Camping is asking what spirituality is involved as a witch. And you had mentioned before you're part of the occult. And so I guess that's mainly your belief system, if you want to say it's that.
yeah. So to answer that question, I'm a Gardnerian witch. So I study Gardnerian witchcraft, and Gardnerian witchcraft is very much based on reconstruction of old English or British paganism, or
Okay.
kind of like Celtic, Anglo-Saxon, sort of based on that. So, we celebrate traditional 8 Sabbats that I'm sure you've probably seen pictures of it. Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh, and then the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices. And we also would meet and celebrate on the full moons. So yeah, there is a lot of spiritual belief around especially Wicca and Gardnerian witchcraft. It's not we don't have sin. A lot of the it's quite different from Christianity. There's a lot of similarities between the two. Like a lot of the holidays that especially the Catholic Church celebrates, they fall very, very close to pagan celebrations, but they're not the same. Like people always confuse Samhain, which means the end of summer in the Celtic language, or Irish Gaelic to be specific, and Halloween, which is All Hallows Eve, which is a Catholic celebration. And even though those two fall around the same time, around October 31st, November 1st, they're 2 separate celebrations. And that's a very big misconception. I
So
think that.
no, that's interesting. Yeah, that's like people often say with Christmas, Saturnalia. Is that another one of your holidays?
Saturnalia is a Roman celebration, yeah. And then there's the Norse or Northern European celebration called Yule, or Jule. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's like Yule, or I think it's Yule. And then in the British Isles, it's just December 21st, the winter solstice.
Yeah,
But there's
interesting.
Yeah, but there's a lot like, for example, Newgrange in Ireland. There's an opening to Newgrange that you can only see the sun come up at the winter solstice. It doesn't happen at the summer solstice, doesn't happen at other times, only the winter solstice. So there's definitely a lot of feasting that probably happened around this time for the Celtic peoples, pre-Christian Europeans.
Mhm.
There may have been, I think the exchange of presents probably comes from Saturnalia, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of traditions that Europeans had practiced that the Catholic Church either adopted or the people just kept doing it. They just keep, doing the practice of it. And because they kept doing it, kind of passed on to the next generation and next generation and next generation.
Hmm. Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I see what I like about Christianity is, and I'll tell you what's going on. So when I was looking at all of these different faiths, one of the things about other faiths is I look at Muslim faith and I can say that God in the Muslim faith is transcendent to the universe, but not interactive with people on the universe. He's not considered a personal God. No one's ever seen Allah. And so that's how the Muslim God differs. And I looked at the Hindu gods and I looked at Buddhism and those kind of faiths. And I thought that those were really interesting. And I like this idea of recycling and that kind of thing. But in those faiths, one thing that's different is the God is immanent. So God is inside this universe with us, essentially, but not transcendent to the universe. And also, according to those faiths, the universe has just recycled. And so it's just in a period of recycling. And so the Big Bang actually supports Christianity because that gives us a start date. And in the Bible, it clearly said we had a start date. And our belief system explains our origins, our meaning, our morality, and our purpose. Also explains the human condition of sin. And it also explains how we can be forgiven for our sins by just basically having faith. And so the God of Christianity is immanent and transcendent. Now, my understanding of pagan gods is the pagan gods are immanent within this planet. If you believe in any of the pagan gods, some people don't. And it doesn't sound like you do. But I've talked to pagans who do believe in these pagan gods, but they're gods that are in many characteristics have human qualities, and the gods in those characteristics also tend to be sinful. They tend to be very frivolous. They tend to do things out of spite. If I look at, say, the god Baal, Baal, and the other gods that were back then, Moloch and that kind of thing, those gods were incestuous. They were, very highly sexual, highly sex oriented. They would have cases where the brother and sister were having sex, and then people, as they worship those gods, would go into the temples and they would start having sex with each other, just to, in the temple on display in front of people to try to appease the gods and for their benefit of their crops. And so one of the
Where do
things.
you where do you get that information?
Where did I get that information? Well, I got a lot of it. I get a lot of it out of the Old Testament.
Okay, but what about historical? I mean, like, is there any uh, historical document outside of the Bible that supports that?
I'm not, I looked into that one time and I did find some university academic studies that
Mhm.
have a lot of different references, and the references aren't just to the Bible. So I'm sure
Right.
that there's some academic references that could be outside.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, because that's what I look for. Because I've done video responses about especially Moloch. Moloch was supposedly uh, people burn their children to Moloch in the Bible.
Right.
That's the Bible.
No, we
There's
do.
no evidence for that. There's no
No, I don't.
supporting evidence for that.
No, there actually is. We have archaeological evidence for that, and we have evidence where they've found bodies of children inside of houses. They basically would kill their children, sacrifice them, and then they would bury them inside their houses, like between wall boards and that kind of thing. And so that we do have some evidence of that kind of stuff occurring back then in the Canaanite cultures.
Okay, but what about babies
But
being burned
actually,
on a
yeah, we
statue
have.
of Moloch?
Well, we do have evidence of that. And I want to ask you, why would you discount what's in the Old Testament? We have multiple authors. If you look at the New Testament and the Old Testament, it's over 1,500 years with over 40 authors.
Mhm.
It's written in 3 different languages and 3 continents, and it's remarkably cohesive. I don't see a reason to
Which
say that we're
which
not
which
allowed to use
version?
any of the
Which
books of
version?
the Old. What's that?
You're talking about the Old Testament?
I just combined the two, and I just mentioned 40 altogether with the Old and the New Testament. But just the Old Testament, we've got multiple authors, multiple sources. Why would you discount that? Why can't we use that as historical information?
Because it's not based on archaeological evidence. It's
Sure it
not.
is. The Bible?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. The Bible's got a lot of archaeological support. In fact, people who
I'm talking about the discipline of archaeology. I'm talking
well,
about the discipline of archaeology, meaning that what it is you go in and you dig and you find like, let's say, a piece of pottery, and then you look at the pottery and it has like an image on it, or a type of dye, and maybe residue of some kind of a grain or something like that, and then a picture into a wider, like, was this a village, or was this a shrine, or was this a sacrifice, or was this a burial? So that's what I'm talking about. There's archaeological evidence for things that happened in the Middle East. There's archaeological evidence for what happened in ancient Babylon, or what that area of the world that was believed to be Babylon. And so what I'm saying is, I've never come across archaeological information that supports what's supposedly in the Bible about Moloch and babies being burnt to Moloch.
well, I'll look into that a little bit more, because I can say that, see, I think that it seems that you have a bias against the Bible, just because it's the Bible, and but you're not considering what, but you're not considering what ancient sources in the Bible said about Moloch and burning of babies. Instead, you're assuming that the Bible authors are biased in some way, making the stuff up, right?
Sure. If
Okay,
that's
so
how
why are you assuming that? What legitimate reason do you have to assume that the Bible authors had any reason to make this up?
I understand that, but I'm not picking on the Bible. So let me give you a different example, and then I'll get back to that, and I'll answer your question. Let me give you an example of Homer's The Odyssey. Yeah, Homer's Odyssey. Or no, not Homer's Odyssey. Let's say damn it, what's the name of it? Yeah, okay, the Homer's Odyssey, I guess, is good enough. There was another one. Anyhow, I think it's Homer's Odyssey, but there's a lot of claims made in Homer's Odyssey about, things that happened, and certain areas like Atlantis was supposedly to exist. So this is what they were writing about. So yes, the writing is 100% valid. That story is 100% valid. But what is it based on? Is it based on stuff that actually happened? And if it is stuff that actually happened, was it embellished? Were other things included? Were other mythologies thrown into it? Were parables created around it? So that's how I view the Bible. I view the Bible as a series of stories, a lot of stories.
But the
Some of
Bible
them,
is a different genre. I mean, this is not even, the Homer's Odyssey is a fiction.
And the Bible is what?
Not a fiction. It's nonfiction. It's historical. It's historical biography in a lot of cases.
Well, the Bible has, now what aspect of the Bible? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's in the Bible that, I mean, I don't know how much you believe of the Bible. Do you believe like it's all 100% absolutely correct? Or do you
Absolutely.
understand that, yeah, okay, really?
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe it's inerrant.
So do you believe that the earth was created in 6 years, or
No, I don't interpret it that way.
Oh,
So I believe the earth is about 4.5 billion years old.
but that contradicts the Bible, doesn't
No,
it?
it actually doesn't contradict it. It's just, in fact, if you read the Bible and you realize that the 7 days are referring to eras of time, big, portions of time, you'll notice that on the seventh day, there's never a closing date. So there's never a nightfall on the seventh day. And it's a symbol that right now we're in the seventh day, essentially. We're in the end times. We're in the seventh day.
Where is that in the Bible?
So in the Bible, if you read the Bible and you look at the 6 days of creation, you're going to notice that God rested on the seventh day. And on the seventh day, they didn't give us, they always said it's the morning, it's the night, it's the morning, it's the night. On the seventh day, there's no night, which is symbolic of the fact that we're still in that particular epoch.
Okay, but you don't take the Bible literally then?
I don't think anybody takes the Bible completely literally in certain parts because, for
Okay.
example, we're not sheep, but Jesus tells us we're sheep, and so there's definitely some metaphors and there's definitely that kind of stuff in the Bible. The way that you read Genesis, if actually speaking of Hugh Ross, if you go back and you look at Genesis, you can see that there's a very legitimate case for Genesis being over a much longer period of time when you consider that all of the occurrences that would have happened on a literal 24-hour day couldn't possibly occur. So
So how do you know which parts of the Bible you can take literally and which parts you can interpret?
well, what you do is you just read it carefully and you compare it to its ancient Near Eastern context, and you just try to study it as far as understanding what the intentions of the author were in transferring that information to us.
So it sounds like the Bible is subjective to the interpretation of the reader.
It's the no, the Bible has an objective or purpose and meaning, and the reader is trying to find out what it is. So the more you read the Bible, the more you're able to sort of better understand what God's underlying principles are. What's really fascinating about the Bible that I think that people might want to think about is the fact that the Bible is it's written on a level that the very simplistic person can understand. But then if you want to dig a bit deeper, it's written on a level that a very highly educated person would be fascinated by, because there's so many layers of information in the Bible that are at all these different levels of writing and understanding. So you've got a book that can appeal to the simplest mind and also the most educated.
Hmm. Interesting. That's, I mean, like I said, I don't read the Bible on a regular basis. I read it once just to see I could read it. But I don't know. To me, to me, it clicked. It was like I mean, it didn't click in that way. What I meant was I understood it as mythology, and I don't mean that as an insult, so please, everybody in your chat, don't come at me. But I read it as symbolism. I read it as mythology. I read it as representations for other things. That's how I read the Bible. And so I didn't take it literally. And then later on, I started encountering other Christians online, because I never like struck up conversations with people in my life about, Christianity and the Bible, but they were taking it literally. And so I didn't understand that. I could, if you take the interpretation of the Bible in a subjective manner, I can see it as being uh, filled with a lot of good mythology, a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff. But if you take it literally, it doesn't make any sense. So it's, to me, that's why I completely just discarded the Bible, is it's because if you take it literal, it's nonsense. But if you take it
Yeah.
subjectively, it makes some sense.
Well, I want to say that one of the things that you mentioned with the 7 days and the 6 days creation, and that I know I've got a couple of young earthers in the chat here. And so I've got a couple of people who do believe in the 6 24-hour days period of time that God created the world. I can say that if God wanted to create the world in 6 days, obviously as he's God, that's completely possible. And so, but that particular issue in the Bible is not something I hang my hat on. The reason why I believe in Christianity has nothing to do with the Bible. It has to do with Jesus personally acting in my life. And so I focus completely on Jesus' resurrection, which I consider the foundation of Christianity and of the Bible. And I consider the Old Testament basically as a book that led us to Jesus. If you want to wonder why Jesus sacrificed himself, is just go to the Old Testament and go to the book of Exodus and look at the fact that there suddenly is this Passover lamb that the Jewish people were sacrificing to basically save themselves. It was a way to repent and to save their sins. And so you've got this blemish-free Passover lamb. It had to be the firstborn, blemish-free. I don't actually forget the firstborn part, but it had to be a blemish-free Passover lamb. And then you've got Jesus being born, and Jesus was the firstborn. And there's a whole bunch of references in the Old Testament that really speak to Jesus, like Zechariah 12:10 and Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22. Malachi 3:1 basically said he'd appear in the second temple, and the second temple was destroyed in 70. So we've got a lot of stuff going on in the Bible, a lot of pointing to Jesus. And then Jesus came as the Passover lamb. So he's not a literal Passover lamb, but he was the only one who was able to be sacrificed for the sins of the world, for the sins of the people, and to open the gates of heaven for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Christianity in a nutshell. But it's really it's something that you might want to consider it. I mean, I just have to say, with my own experience, it took me a long time, 20 years of just floundering around, wondering if I was finding the right thing, but I always wanted to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The truth really matters to me. I don't want to be worshiping a God that, I find out at the end of the days is not the truth. And so I think if anyone's listening here, I would just say, go read the book of Matthew or read Mark or something like that. And definitely read the book of John and just see what happens as you read that. And if you feel like if you have ears to hear, you'll hear that. You'll hear Jesus' message. If you want to be in heaven, if you want to have that opportunity, all you have to do is just have a little faith. That's another way that Christianity is different than all of these other belief systems, because the other ones are all based on works. And Christianity says, no, your works are never going to be good enough in God's eyes. You can't possibly be on Jesus's level, essentially. So the only idea for us is we just have to have faith.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe that there's only one true religion, and that's Christianity?
Yes.
Okay. So all the other religions in the world are false to you?
Well, I say Judeo-Christianity. So I wouldn't say, I'm not going to, obviously the Jewish faith, but then the Jews who now are Messianic Jews, those are the ones who have it correct.
Okay. So Judeo-Christianity is the one true religion?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. You see, I always find that kind of fascinating, because I don't think of it that way. Like, because my path, the way that I view life and I view even death at sometimes, is my belief is very malleable. It's subjective. So like, let's say if I came along new information, like let's say about astrology, how astrology is based upon a geocentric model of the universe and not a heliocentric model of the universe, and how
Hey, where you going?
Sorry.
Hey, I'll be off in just is Jen over here yet? Okay, sorry, I might have to get going here in just a second.
That's okay. I'll finish it up then with this. But anyhow, I was going to get into something, but I'll save that for another time. But I mean, I find it interesting that Christians are so, and I don't want to insult you. That's not my intention at all. So please don't take it that way. But I find that Christians are very, they're not accepting of other beliefs in the same way that I believe that other faiths are accepting of Christians. Does that make sense? I don't know if you would probably not agree with that, but
no, I used to be in your shoes. I used to think like that. In fact, when I was in my 20s, when I was a Catholic, basically what I used to think back then is I started gravitating away from Christianity, because I thought, well, these other belief systems, we must all have little bits of, I mean, for some reason, the golden rule is present in all of these different faiths. And so I thought, well, each of these different faiths must be some sort of manifestation of God. And so I believed that for, a bunch of years. And I was thinking that, and I started gravitating towards stuff like Wayne Dyer, who writes a lot of this stuff on the sacred self and that sort of thing. And he basically gave me this idea that maybe Jesus didn't even resurrect. Maybe this is just one of many legitimate faiths, and we're all on the same level. But as I read the Bible, I see very clearly that Jesus doesn't give us that choice. He basically said the only way to heaven is through him. And so if you're going to be a Christian and you have to live out what Jesus said, then you have to believe that. Now I do, I have a lot of friends who are in these other faiths. In fact, I went and bought a book by Dr. Michael Brown just so I could talk to my Jewish friends. I've got a Muslim friend, and these are really good friends of mine at my work, and I've got a Hindu friend, and so I've got some really good friends, and I always try to figure out, what can I say? Is there anything I can say? What was interesting was my Hindu friend actually a lot of times comes into my office and asks me to pray for his people around him in his life. He's got a couple of people, like his sisters right now got cancer, and a really good friend of his has cancer. And he always comes in my office and says, can I pray for his friends and these two? And I, of course I will. So.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I think it's have you heard of interfaith?
Yes, sure.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of I think they meet like every 4 years or something, but they have interfaith meetings in different parts of the world, which I've never attended one of them, but I've always thought that those would be fascinating to attend, to see people from all these different faiths coming together. Even though maybe they don't agree with one another, they still are able to come together and talk and exchange ideas and exchange philosophies and exchange various things like that. I've always found that interesting. I think there's a lot of beliefs in this world that it's not for me. You know what I mean? It's just
Mm-hmm.
not my cup of tea. My faith is my faith and my belief is my belief.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I encounter people like yourself and other people who have different beliefs, I always find it interesting to ask them questions about their belief and find out about their belief, because for me, it's a way for me to find some commonality, some
Mm-hmm.
string that unites us all, even if it's the most obscure string whatsoever. But we find a way to connect with each other on a human level and understand that your beliefs are not all that bizarre, and your beliefs are not, they may be strange to me, but they're not dangerous, they're not evil, you know, they're not wrong, they're not opening up portals to other dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
you know. It's just maybe something that I don't understand, or something that I have a different interpretation of, or I have a different experience with, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I think you're making a good move by just wanting to reach out and understand other people's faiths and to see what is the good one. Actually, I'm going to have to go and
yeah,
look
that's
tonight.
okay. That's okay.
I
Thank you.
hear the knocking on the door now.
Yeah.
So I thought I heard it before. Yes, they're definitely here. Okay, so anyway, I want to say thank you so much, Hellbound Heathen, for coming in here.
It was a lot of pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream.
All right. Bye-bye.